Yeah, so we scaled from 6 to 8 figures within 4 years. It is easy to get lost in all of these opportunities like external traffic and ManyChat and Shopify.
Cool. Today we're joined by a big guest. Michael, I was going to attempt to pronounce your surname. I'm going to do it, but welcome to the channel. We're just going to dive straight into it. A very brief summary is Michael scaled and exited a 8-figure Amazon FBA brand. So I'm going to stop talking and pass it over to you, Michael. Welcome to the channel, man. It's great to have you on and great to chat to you.
Hi, Alex. Happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction. So as you said, my name is Michael, and I work with Myles. Some of you may know him from his YouTube channel, and we worked together and scaled an Amazon FBA business private label to 8 figures. And I would like to begin with how my journey started on Amazon. I actually started selling 6 years ago, and I'm from Czech Republic. So when I started with $4,000, it really took me quite some time to save up that because I was making around $4 per hour. So when I launched, I was like completely overwhelmed, yet somehow I managed to make it work. And I was listening to podcasts, videos, reading books, and one part of my education was networking. So I was on Reddit and Facebook groups pretty much every single evening. And that's actually how I met Myles, because he was posting on Reddit that he was looking for someone who could help him with his business. So I remember that I reached out to him, telling him that I'm not a good fit, because I don't know much about Amazon, but I wanted to talk with him about his business, to learn more lessons and have a few calls. And actually we had a first call, and then he decided to offer me a job as a general manager in his business. And he actually came to Prague to meet me, and basically then that's how we started working together. And obviously I was incredibly grateful for that opportunity, because I've learned so much, and I've learned like what was wrong in my own business, because at that time he was a high 6-figure seller, so everything was so much better than what I had because I had a single product, and that's how it all started.
Michael, can I ask you, which country? Were you selling in the US, or were you selling in Europe? Or?
Yeah, I was selling in the US. Yeah, I had one product in the fitness niche. And after like 3-4 months, I get around $1,000 profit per month, which was like 3 times more than I was earning in my day job, which was cool.
Nice.
Did you then straight away, were you going to go full-time into Amazon working for yourself, or were you still, until Myles offered you the role, were you still working your other job as well?
Yeah, I was basically starting a full-time Amazon. I was getting ready to launch my second product, and then I got the offer from Myles. So I basically kept my business on the back burner to just sell a few products. And then I essentially sold out and focused mostly on working with Myles.
Awesome.
Nice.
So
nice.
Myles Dunphy, by the way, guys, like most of you will be familiar. We're going to flash up his YouTube channel here. It was called The Nomad Millionaire. It was, 45,000 odd subscribers now. Huge channel. Was one that the first channel Alex ever showed me about Amazon FBA when he introduced me to it. So I learned a lot from it. A lot of people learned a lot from it. And Myles is a kind of well-known guy in the space. And behind the scenes, kind of pulling the strings of the business was Michael when it scaled to 8 figures, which you don't see that often, to be honest. So when you joined with him, when you joined up with Myles, then, so what was how did it play out the kind of first 6 months? Was it a real steep learning curve?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the first 6 months, I was completely blown away because, as I said, I had one product, just like doing my thing, learning stuff. But when I started working with Myles, if you know Myles, you know that he's very organized. So I basically stepped into the system. He had like the task management software, SOPs. So I was learning something every single day, right? And that was an incredible experience. Like, and I'm just getting the value out of it to this day. Basically, our strategy when scaling the business was quite simple. It was all about efficiency and keeping it simple, playing the Amazon game. So we essentially had 3 steps: launch products, optimize listings, and expand to new marketplaces. Very simple. So like 90% of the projects and the opportunities, it was all about resisting the temptation to launch a Shopify store, to drive external traffic, to work with influencers. We knew that we could do a few things well, so we were focused all of our efforts on that.
That's interesting because a lot of the things you just mentioned are very like hot topics now on Amazon. If you do a course or you watch most YouTube channels and you speak to a lot of people, they want to know about external traffic and all of this stuff. So that was your strategy then. You wanted to focus on what you were doing well. Can you give us an idea then? So when you joined, you said Myles was doing 6 figures. Can you give us an idea of kind of the key points then? You went from 6 figures when you joined to you were doing 8 figures when the business was sold and when you exited. Can you give us an idea then of like the key points throughout that sort of journey, and kind of over how many years was that as well? That was over, when you joined to when you exited.
Yeah, so we scaled from 6 to 8 figures within 4 years. And essentially the strategy was this simple, because I think that it is easy to get lost in all of these opportunities like external traffic and ManyChat and Shopify. But if you have a small team, or if it's just you as a solo entrepreneur, it's very easy to get spread too thin. I think that most of these strategies can actually work, but if you try to pursue everything, you pretty much get nothing done, right? So our strategy was to do just a few things we were doing, to do it better. Make better listings, launch more products, launch products faster and better, and then expand to new marketplaces to really leverage what we've already built in the US.
Do you find, Michael, with the growth, I don't know, maybe you know the figures off the top of your head, but did it go kind of 1 million, 3 million, 8 million? Do you know roughly what the yearly growth was?
Yeah, we were essentially doubling. Then obviously the lockdowns helped our business a lot. So then we doubled again. So we were doubling the business pretty much every year. Yeah, something around that. Yeah.
See, I think that's a really interesting point. When people start out on Amazon, especially if people are watching this early on, it's quite hard to imagine how fast the business can grow. And maybe 3 years feels like a long time, but in 3 years, if you can go to a multiple 7-figure business, it really can happen. And the kind of compounding effect, it's hard to visualize it, but when you speak to people like yourself that have done it, and it obviously is possible if you kind of play the game properly and do the right things, then yeah, you're kind of a good example of the fact that it can be done. But what were the big, for you guys to jump up that much and have that crazy growth? Is that, I mean, it's hard to keep up with, especially you kind of really need to know your numbers and be really dialed in. What would you think were the key jumps per year? Like, was it expanding to new markets? Was it launching a certain number of new products every year?
Yeah, I would say it was the new products when we were trying to launch more and more products every year. So we basically increased our chances that we will hit a home run, and that will eventually help us scale the business. Plus, we were also already focused on our bestsellers, because we realized that it was easier to scale a product that was already working with thousands of reviews, trying to rank it a little bit better for a little bit more keywords, rather than launching 10 other products, right? And then we tried to combine these two strategies, like launch a lot of products, see what sticks, keep that, make sure it's taken care of, and then launch even more products. So our goal was to dominate the niche. And in the end, we essentially had like 3 of our products ranked in the top 5 for pretty much every keyword in our niche, right? So if someone searched for the keyword in our niche, in the top 5, there were already 2 or 3 of our products. So we had the brand presence there, which also helps with the social proof.
That's huge.
This is one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we call it like taking up real estate. So obviously there's a limited amount of real estate on the front page of Amazon. Most of the clicks, they go to the top 4 organic spots and the top, the paid spots. So was there any key learnings with this scaling with, for example, when you mentioned the optimizations around squeezing a little bit more out of those keywords, were there any key learnings along the way with regards to that, with the organic ranking and that type of stuff that you found?
Yeah, I would say that the winning products really take everything, because it's really hard to make work a product that's just not working, right? Because we had some of these products and I thought they were great, so I was trying to put more and more effort into that, just like trying to rank it, trying to do something about it, because I liked the product. But then I had to realize, like, it's not about me, it's just about the numbers, it's about the performance. And if this product is working, maybe it was not my favorite, doesn't matter. Just focus on that, look at the keywords, look at the conversion rates. And as I said, we had multiple products. So when we analyzed the keywords, we are trying to find a keyword for each product. So we were looking at the market from the keyword perspective rather than the product perspective, right? Because most people, when you launch, you have a product and then you try to find keywords to rank for. But we basically flipped that around. We had a bunch of keywords and we were looking for keywords, and then we developed products based on those keywords, trying to fill in those gaps. As I said, our goal was to really dominate every single keyword, even like whether it was a long tail keyword, we tried to dominate it with our products.
Did you have a kind of when you launched a product and you obviously were very very kind of centered in on the numbers and the performance? Did you say order enough units to do one inventory turn, and did you decide within say a month, 2 months, 3 months? How quickly would you decide to pull the plug on a product that wasn't working?
Yeah, so we try to be conservative. So we usually ordered like, I would say around 2 months worth of stock based on our best guess sales. And sometimes when we hit the home run, we sold out in like 5 days. And that happened a few times, right? So that's not great, but it simply happens. But I think that in most times when we launched the product, it wasn't doing well. We always managed to sell out and basically get our money back and break even, right? A few times we lost a few $1,000s, but that's fine, right? Because you are essentially the product development pipeline is to verify the potential of the products and then move it further to see whether to keep it, rank it further, or just drop it.
Makes sense.
Was that something that you developed? So the pipeline, for example, so just kind of jumping back to Myles' system. So is that something that you guys developed? I assume you developed quite a lot of systems together. Obviously, you had some when you joined the business, but how did you kind of combine and come up with that system, for example?
Yeah, so I think that we realized after a year or so that there was a problem, because I realized that I was already spending a lot of my time just maintaining the business, right? And it was around 7 figures. And when I looked at my time allocation, I was spending like 80%, 90% of my time maintaining the business, like supply, putting out fires, listings suppressed, and so on. So we were not really developing that many products at that time. And we realized that we had to change something, right? We were calling this like hitting the wall, where you just are no longer focused on growth. You are just focused on maintaining the business. So nothing's really happening. You are just maintaining the business. And without Myles, I wouldn't even realize that it was happening, because it's really easy to get lost in the grind, right? If you don't see the big picture, that you don't see that you are not moving the needle. And then we realized we had to change something, and there needs to be some structure, and there needs to be some system, so I could put more hours into growth. And in our case, growth was mostly coming from product development. So we developed a system, a pipeline that would allow us to manage multiple moving pieces, so multiple product launches in US, and then obviously expanding to other marketplaces, which essentially led to a moment when in our pipeline we had like 20 or 25 products, and you had to do translations for listings, right? You had to get the photos, and that's when we realized like we need a team, because the idea was that my expertise was the product development, the product design, the product research, right? And once I do that, once the product is finished, I should hand over that to someone so I could really focus on that one area where I have the most leverage. And then where the brand manager came into play, so they started optimizing the listings, preparing PPC campaigns, and the supply manager did all of the inventory management, inventory forecasting, and so on. So I could be focused mostly on that single point that only I could do.
Nice. So that was kind of your biggest challenge at that point. Then it was hitting that wall, like you said. So at this point, what kind of revenue, when you talk about hitting this wall and Myles having this sort of feedback for you that perhaps you were too busy in the weeds and you weren't focusing on what your strengths were, what kind of revenue point was that?
Yeah, it was around 7 figures. We were crossing 7 figures, so I would say like 1.5 million. But obviously, it may be different for everyone, because some sellers hit 7 figures with a single product. Other sellers need 10 products to reach 7 figures, right? So it's different, but sooner or later, it happens to everyone, I'd say, right? And I think that the good indicator is that you are in this place, that you are hitting the wall, that if you stop, your business would stop as well. Like, how long can your business survive if you stop working today? Is it like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? I'm not talking about growth. I'm just talking about like just maintaining the business. And I would say for most sellers, if you are a solo entrepreneur, it's like 2-3 weeks. It depends on like your supply cycle, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that was kind of, sorry, Tom, to jump in. That was kind of going to lead me into like the next question on, if you are an Amazon business owner, at what point do you start hiring? So I guess this is kind of what you're talking about now, right?
Yes, and I would say it's sooner than most people think, because if you just look at the value of delegation, right? If there is someone who could do the same job as you for less money, you are essentially losing the money if you are doing it yourself, right? So let's say you are earning on average, based on your business profit, based on the hours you work, $50 per hour, and you are working in supply, and there is someone out there who can do the exact same job for $15 per hour. So you are losing money every hour you spend doing that. And I say sooner than most people think is that because once you hit the wall, once you are maxed out just maintaining the business, it's actually hard to find the time to build the systems and to find the person who can help you, right? You need the capacity to learn how to manage a team, how to develop a process, and so on.
That's really interesting because I remember Myles had a video, it must have been around in 2020 or 2019, and it was him. He always tracked, like you do, he tracked all of his hours worked, like down, like it was like Tim Ferriss, but like times 10. It was crazy, like the 1 hour work week almost. And
yeah,
I remember him working out his hourly rate, and it was something I'm guessing back in my mind, but say $3,000 or $4,000. And I was thinking, well, how, like, that doesn't, to me then it didn't make sense. And I was looking at it, thinking like, that's a crazy number. And now, a couple of years down the line, and we're now at the point where we're building a team for our business. And I realized, like, yeah, your hourly rate is super high. Like, you should definitely delegate. And we're exactly the same point where you mentioned there, if you get so far in, it's hard to find the time to create the systems. And you've actually got some great YouTube videos. Like Michael's got a channel, which we'll link down below, with some awesome tips on kind of setting up teams, scaling a business. Systems is a massive strong point, as you guys can probably tell. And he says in one of your videos, I think, Michael, that you said, put the time in now, spend a week building these systems to save yourself, 6 months of time down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I think that most people like try to stay away from it because if you are doing the thing, like building the system actually takes extra time. So it feels like, okay, I have a few hours, I will do the thing. I don't have the time to build the system. But like, if you don't have the time to build the system, that's your first warning sign, right? And as you said, like if you build the system, even if it's just you doing the thing, let's say you are optimizing your listing. And if you have some checklist, you can do it twice as fast if you have some system in place, some procedure, something to follow, right? And as I said, it's also about minimizing the errors. Because if you have, let's say, the product development pipeline, as I mentioned, 20 products, 25 moving pieces, like good luck trying to keep up with that without some system in place, right? There will be some delays, errors, and so on. So having the system, you do it faster and you minimize the errors.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. Could you talk us through then, Michael, kind of like the first major hire? Could you talk us through what that looked like and who it was and how that worked as a process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, I think that the most important step was to really step out of the business and look at the business and see it as a pipeline, to see the core processes, right? So understand what actually happens in the business before I start thinking about hiring. Because most people, if they decide, okay, I need to hire, I hire a general VA. And if you hire a general VA, you are essentially stuck deciding, right? You tell them what to do, when to do it, you review their work, and so on. You don't really free up much of your time, and especially you don't free up the mental capacity because you are still responsible for the outcome. And for us, once we did that and looked at the business as a pipeline, and especially looked at the time allocation, as you mentioned, time tracking, it really helped me to see where I'm spending the most of my time and what's low value. Like, where could I find someone to do the exact same job? Probably not in the product development phase because that was my expertise and it would be very hard to replace myself. But it was fairly easy to do that in supply, right? Because I was spending, as I said, when we hit the wall, I was spending around like 60% of my time in supply, like talking to suppliers, freight, shipment plans, and so on. And I was like, okay, let's find someone. So that was the first hire. But before we did that, we had to make sure that some process is in place, right? That we have the procedures so we can then even define the requirements for that particular job. Like, who is the person? What skill sets should they have? And once we defined that, based on the process, we knew, like, this is the process we want to delegate. These are the requirements to step into the process and be accountable for that. So let's hire that person. And for us, it was a supply manager.
So how did you find that transition then? So you were obviously the one operating the business, and then you transitioned to kind of running, like working, I think you mentioned before, like working in the business versus working on the business. So you now were managing a person. So did you find you had a kind of steep learning curve with managing people, or did you find that the systems that you guys built kind of worked and they kind of moved into it straight away and learned super quickly?
Yeah, so Myles wanted me to basically act like the owner of the business, even though I was the operator, right? And I think that there was an important mindset shift, so I could just look at the business differently, to see the business as a machine. Because before that, I had this to-do list, and it was like, I need to do this. And when I switched my mindset, I was like, this needs to be done, and it doesn't have to be done by me, right? So I think that this was an important shift. So I was no longer looking at tasks like, okay, this is my to-do list, because I was like conditioned to think like that from school and from my previous job, right? Because this is the stuff I do. Maybe you could do it a little bit better. Maybe you could do it a little bit faster, but you never think like, I don't want to do it at all. There is someone out there who can do the exact same job, and ideally even a way better job than me, doing that and being accountable for that particular outcome.
When you initially started looking to this person, because I know Myles found you on Reddit, which, like, thinking about this now, it seems quite funny, but where did you look to hire this person, and what did the actual hiring process look like? Was it the first person you interviewed, or, you know, was it kind of, you know, how did that process look?
Yeah, so we basically tried to develop a hiring funnel. So we could get a lot of candidates at the top and trying to funnel them down with as little effort as possible. So then we can just talk to the best ones, right? You don't want to talk to 50 candidates, because the interviews, if you want to go deep, like, it can take an hour. And if you interview 50 candidates, that's a lot of time. So we basically had a process that our goal was to advertise the job on multiple platforms. We used FreeUp, Upwork, freelancer.com, and there are so many platforms. There are like dozens of them. So you can just advertise the ad, make sure that you are super specific in your ad, right? You already know the requirements about the process, be super specific, and send them to a questionnaire, right? Something that you can then filter out quickly without actually having to talk to them, right? So you can have some questionnaire answering questions relevant to that particular process. So in supply, we would be asking about their past experience, about some supply, maybe some trial task as well. And then we will filter them out based on their answers, so we can just talk to just a few candidates. And we essentially ended up talking to like 4 or 5 people and ended up hiring one, and it was a good fit. So yeah.
Did they have like a lot of Amazon experience, or was it a case of just general experience in, say, physical products?
Yeah, so for the supply manager, we were looking some experience, obviously, with Excel, someone who's like data-driven and detail-oriented. And so we did not ask for experience with Amazon. But for example, when we were hiring our brand manager, like, experience with Amazon was necessary, right? We wanted someone who is ideally already a seller or worked for another seller, so they would understand everything about Amazon. So we could just take them and plug them into our system so they can like hit the ground running. Because obviously the onboarding period can be a huge time investment as well. If you spend 2 months training someone and then it's not the right fit, they decide to leave or so on. So it's like, okay, I want to make sure that the person I find is a good fit. So I want to try to maximize our chances that we will find a good candidate. And I think it's a good way to look at this, similar as you look at, let's say, product development, right? You have no guarantee that your product launch will be successful. The only thing you can do is increase your chances that you will succeed, right? And it's the same with hiring. Sometimes you miss, but you just have to take another shot, right? But you want to increase your chances to find the right candidate.
So the initial hire then was on the supply chain side, and then you obviously had a brand manager. So initially it was you and Myles, and then you hired somebody for the supply chain. So can you sort of give us an overview of, like, from that point, who you hired, and then when you exited the business, what did the team sort of consist of at that point?
Yeah, so we essentially had 3 full-time people working. Was me, brand manager, supply manager, and 2 part-time. So that was basically customer service agent and our VA for the team. So it is a fairly small team, and that's also one of the reasons why we decided to exit, because if we would decide to double the business and grow to, let's say, 20 million, we would have to restructure the team and basically face a different set of problems. And we decided, like, we don't really want to do it. We want to be small and efficient, but for us, we no longer see the options to scale the business even further with such a small and efficient team, right? So the goal for us was that Myles can be at the top, talking mostly to me about the strategy and the risks ahead. And for me, it was focusing most of my time on growth and being able to take some time off so I can just think about the business rather than operating it. So it was clear that we needed supply manager, brand manager to do product development, marketing, and so on, and then the customer service agent. So basically all of the areas that maintain the business were covered by the team, so I could focus on managing the team and growing the business.
I mean, that just to touch back on that point, I can't think of many businesses in the world that can go to 8 figures with 3 full-time members of staff. Like, I think the way most companies work, like you kind of work out the average of per employee, what they bring value-wise. So we're looking at 3.3 million of value per person. Maybe called it 2.5 if Myles is involved as well. I'm sure he had some important decisions to make. But that's absolutely insane that you can grow a business. And that's everyone watching this. That's an insane example of how big you can grow a business with such a small team, but ensuring that you do employ the right people, because I think it's very common in the space. People employ a VA almost like it's like a badge of honor. Like, I've got a VA now. Yeah, I'm going to outsource everything, but they don't know how to do the projects themselves. And you guys obviously were experts in every area before you scaled up. But one question I had was, I know on Myles' channel, I think he said you guys had was it a weekly meeting that you did with yourself? And then I guess you obviously were in touch with the team day to day. So that meeting, was it a case of, did he come there? Did you kind of send him some data and then he came to you with some questions? Or was it you bringing topics that you wanted to discuss in that weekly meeting and you'd cover it kind of pretty in depth for a couple of hours?
Yeah, so usually Myles came up with the plan for the year with some strategic projects, and then I was doing the month-to-month planning, and I was basically presenting him the results and the obstacles and challenges I'm facing. So we could also analyze the risks together, because I knew the details and he had like the big picture perspective, which was incredibly helpful, right? And obviously, even though he wasn't working every single day, his insights were extremely valuable. Like, we couldn't do it without that, because he had the perspective. He was sitting at the top looking like, what's wrong, what could go wrong, where is the leverage, and he was basically telling me. So we were providing feedback both ways to really came up with a plan and a specific solution.
Did you make or did you take action very quickly? A phrase that gets banded around in business, you hear patient, what is that? Impatient with action, patient with results.
Patient with results.
Were you guys very quick to act on any decision that had to be made week to week? Was it almost made immediately in that meeting, or was it kind of stretched out over a few weeks or months?
Yeah, so basically when I learned from Myles how to keep stuff organized and systemized, I really tended to, like, when we came up with a new project, I wanted to have some system in place first. So Myles had to step in and tell me, like, you know, you need to move faster, because like you don't need this super detailed system before you even begin, right? So we were basically balancing each other out. So he was trying to push me so I move faster, and then I was trying to keep things organized so I don't mess up anything.
Was that with like sorry, I find this really interesting. I'm going to jump in one more question, because I know you guys, I remember Myles' videos again with quite a lot of like almost like decision trees, almost like charts where you go, if we took this action, this is a result. If we took this action, this is a result. And is that the way you guys approached every kind of big decision?
Yeah, I think that a big game changer for our cooperation was after like a year in. Obviously, as you can imagine, it was all new to me. So I was asking quite a lot of questions, right? So we came up with like a decision tree. So I basically have to make multiple decisions before I get to a point where I can actually ask him a question, right? So he came up with this tree for me, so I wouldn't be like coming to him with these questions. So I like, do we have a system for that, and so on. So it was like a 5 questions for myself, and if I answered like no, I could then go and ask him about that, which obviously helped my confidence as well. So I was making more decisions. He had more time to stay at the top, and that's how we basically evolved the full structure.
Michael, would you say that you're naturally, because Tom and I, one of the disadvantages of our business relationship is we're both very similar in the sense that we're not naturally super organized. We're not naturally, we don't naturally gravitate towards building systems like this. And I think there's probably going to be a lot of people that are watching this, and one of the things they think is, I'm not naturally like that. So were you naturally like that before you? I know Myles was a massive sort of influence on all of this for you, and you learned a lot from him. But were you naturally like that before? Were you a very organized person?
Yes, in my personal life, especially even with my hobbies, I had like systems in place where I have to do it for like 90 minutes every day, and I like to have a fixed schedule where I know when to wake up, when to eat, you know. So I also have like a streamlined personal life, but I didn't know how to implement that into a business, because when I started my own business, it was very chaotic because I didn't even know what I didn't know, right? So I was completely confused. But once I stepped in and I saw the power from Myles, like I can actually do various disciplines and develop various skill sets. You know, like in Amazon, you have to do like product development, marketing, some data analysis. It's completely different things. But if you have the systems in place, like you can do all of that and be extremely efficient. So I would say I had the natural tendency to do that, but Myles taught me how, basically.
I think what was really powerful that we've kind of observed from the outside, and you mentioned it in this interview as well, is it felt like Myles, he dedicates time to just thinking, just clear time, like no other influences. Like you need to think about your business and think about the bigger picture, because as you mentioned, it's super easy to get stuck in the weeds doing all the tasks day to day. So when you employed that team and you could take a step back, did you? I mean, like you said, you got a very organized week. Did you almost allocate a certain amount of time per week to just be away from your computer, away from your phone, just thinking about the business?
Yeah, basically it was not, initially I thought it was all about just the time, right? I'm trying to save some time. I'm trying to save 10 hours per week so I could do something else. But I realized it's also about the mental capacity, the capacity to think about stuff, right? Because some areas of your business doesn't require that much time, but it requires a lot of your mental capacity. You keep thinking about it, you are worried about it. And when I realized, okay, now we have a brand manager dealing with suppressed listings, for example, I no longer have to think about it. I no longer have to check sales every morning. So I'm not thinking about it. I have the capacity to think about the products, right? So when I'm walking outside, when I'm journaling, I'm no longer thinking like, maybe our product got suppressed, I should probably check Seller Central. I'm thinking about the next product to launch, about like new ways to optimize the listing. So I think that's extremely valuable to think and consider the mental capacity, not just the time.
I think that's been one thing for us as we've grown is Tom naturally gravitated towards doing sort of like the logistics and the supply management side. And I ended up doing a little bit more of like the product development and that type of stuff. And it got to a point probably in the past like 4 months or so where I kind of realized I was asking Tom a lot of questions about, you know, product development, whatever it is. And he wasn't really on the same page with me, and it was because he was spending so much time on the supply management side that he didn't have the time to think about that type of stuff. And I was trying to have these conversations with him. So like, it's one of the things that we're doing in our business now is we're trying to systemize everything as much as we can, because, you know, I want Tom also to be able to sort of focus. It's a little bit different for us because we're kind of co-founders. There's not just that one person at the top like it was with you and Myles. So exactly what you've been describing is kind of the where we're at with our own business right now. We've realized that Tom's time is not best spent speaking to suppliers and, you know, organizing when a shipment is landing and all of that type of stuff. I think one of the pain points for us, and we touched a little bit on this, and I know we're coming up to 35 minutes, so we'll start wrapping it up. But I think one of the key pain points, and it'd just be good to get a bit of an insight into this from you, is that transition is we've hired somebody now, and for example, they're updating spreadsheets. You know, they're starting to do little bits of stuff for us. We've still not completely handed that over. And a question that I have in my mind is it because we've not hired the right person, or is it because the system is not in place? Or kind of both, maybe, I don't know.
I would say that the key to really transfer the accountability for that particular outcome is to really define four fundamentals, right? You have to define what you want to delegate to them, right? That's the process. Those are the routines, the steps, the tasks. And you need to make sure they know that exactly what you want them to do. Those are your expectations, right? Then you need to define the how. That's like they need to know how to do all of that. They need to know like how these spreadsheets work. They need to have the procedures to do that. And you also should explain like the why, your why, like why are they doing that and why it matters. I have a good example, for example, customer service. if you tell them like you have to reply to buyer messages within 24 hours. But they need to understand why. Because if you don't do that, we may receive a negative review. And if you receive 1-star review, it takes around 7 or 6 5-star reviews to balance that out. And that's a lot of sales, right? So if you look at the cost of not replying in time, it's very, very high. So you explain the why, the context of the business. And the fourth fundamental is to really understand their why, like what they want to learn, what they want to get, right? So you can then align the incentives. So you can have KPIs for short-term performance, and then you have something to align incentives in the long term. Maybe have a share for them in your exit strategy, like because it takes a lot of time to replace someone. You don't want to fire them after 6 months, or you don't want them to leave after 6 months. So you want to make sure if you have a plan to stay in business for 3-4 years, maybe more, you probably want them to stay on board for that period. So you should have some growth plan for them so they can get better and they know that they are in the right boat, essentially, right? So, and once you define all of that, you can then really successfully transfer the accountability to them. But obviously, it can happen that it just doesn't work, right? And then you have to investigate. Make sure they understand all of these 4 points. And if that's the case and you are still not getting the results, it is possible that they are simply not the right fit. And in that case, you should really avoid the sunk cost fallacy and just find someone else, right? You have to make the decision because it's bad to find someone who is not the right fit, right? That happens. But what's even worse is to keep them on board, trying to make it work if you know that it just doesn't, but you are just subconsciously trying to avoid the whole process. So you think like, yeah, maybe I am fine that they are not doing a great job, or maybe they'll get better even though they've been doing that for 6 months, right? So I think it's important to really look at the problem that maybe you are doing something wrong. That's the first step. And if you really confirm that you are doing nothing wrong, then make the decision and try to find someone else.
Well, I'm gonna watch this interview back and take notes because this is very insightful. I think there's a lot of value being provided here. I wanted to ask, just to circle back around to a question that I think people will have watching this channel, is just circling back to launching products, is the success rate you guys would have. Because I think a lot of people think every product needs to be a home run, or they feel like it's a big failure. Do you know roughly, out of say every 5 products you launched, how many would you say kind of landed and were successful in your eyes?
Yeah, I would say like out of 5, 1 was like a really good, maybe a bestseller. 3 were like average, 2 to 3 were average, and the rest was like a failure. We sometimes decided to keep the failure to see like how it performs throughout the year, because our business was quite seasonal. So usually we wanted to like, let's wait for the season and let's see. Maybe it won't be making money throughout the year and we will make it back in Q4. But as you said, like trying to get the home runs is great, but launching a bunch of average products, if you have the system to support it, so you can have 20, 30, 40 SKUs, it's completely fine, right? You still grow. And rather than having like 1 bestseller and then launching like 5, 6, 7 dots and not having any success with that. So yeah, the success rate is probably not as high as most people would like it to be.
Yeah, no, completely. I think that's kind of what I was thinking you would say, which is people really need to take that on board and think, obviously you want to launch and give yourself the best chance possible and do the right product research. And that first couple of products are very, very important. But if your first one failed, don't give up. If you've got all the systems in place and you've learned the skills properly, you can definitely still have success, and you kind of got to persevere, and then you can scale to an 8-figure business like these guys potentially.
Yeah, I've got one last question, and then Tom, I'll leave it to you. I don't know if you've got another question as well, because I think Michael, we really appreciate your time, and don't want to. We could carry on speaking to you for another couple of hours, I imagine. But my question is, as Tom said, what you guys did was absolutely amazing. We were huge fans of Myles from his channel. As soon as we spoke to you initially, and we were just mega impressed with everything, just huge respect for what you did. And it's a massive achievement, regardless of the industry or whatever, it's huge. Is there one thing that, looking back at the entire journey from start to finish, that you think, I wish maybe we'd have done that differently? Yeah,
so I would say it would be trying to develop the structure first and really look at the process rather than the outcome, right? Because initially what happened, that if we had like a successful launch, I was like, okay, that's perfect. I no longer have to like push as hard because I already have like I'm already achieving the milestones, the goals we had. So once I launched like a product that was working, I was basically trying to like take some time off and relax because I was getting the numbers we wanted to have. But I think that flipping that around and looking at rather the process, okay, the goal is to launch one product every 2 months, no matter what happens. Do you have 3 bestsellers? Great, let's launch even more, right? And overall, like trying to be really efficient with that process and really identify what can grow your business, what you really identify what is your expertise and focus most of your time on that. Because I think I essentially wasted so many hours, essentially thousands of hours, doing things that I could have delegated to someone else, and then I could work on my expertise, work on the stuff that would actually grow the business. Like it's very hard to say, obviously, where we would end up if we would do that differently, but it's something I think it's extremely important to really define what your game is and then play it as well as you can.
Great answer. No, I mean, like Alex said, I think it's hard to, when you scale to an 8-figure business, it's hard to think in that short amount of time. It's hard to think of many things went wrong. But obviously, we know you guys did face challenges, as everyone does in the space. That's probably my final question, actually. What would you say in the 4 years and with that crazy growth? What was the biggest challenge that you guys faced in the business? Was it keeping up with the growth itself? Was it cash flow or financing the business?
I would say, first of all, it was really managing the stock properly because we lost quite a lot of money and a lot of like ranking and everything due to stock out periods, which happened like during the lockdowns. As you know, the situation with freight was quite insane in 2020 and 21. So that was first. That was the first thing. And the second thing was basically out of our control, which is when we were expanding to Europe, it took a while to even get the VAT numbers, right? In Germany, it got stuck for like a year. So we were essentially restricted by that, even though everything was ready. We had units in Germany, stored in Germany, ready to be sold, but we had no VAT number for essentially a year, right? So there were things we could have done differently, and there were things we just nothing you can do about it, right? So you can then change the projects. Okay, not expand in Germany. What else we can do? Where else we can like invest the time and make sure we actually make up for that growth that we lost there.
Okay, I mean, I guess the way to wrap this up is, Michael, we know you've got a YouTube channel that you've started out, which has got honestly the content Michael's putting out for his first, like, even like his first video is so high level. So definitely subscribe to his channel, you guys. We'll link it down below. But what are you doing now with your time, Michael? Like, you've obviously had the exit. Obviously, you were a part owner of the business, so you've had a bit of celebration. Did you have a big celebration? Did you have a lot of time off, or what are you doing with yourself now?
Yeah, I had some time off, like 3 months, and then I realized, like, being retired, like I was getting like bored, not doing anything. So I started working with a few sellers to really use what we've built to show them like the systems, the processes, how we hired, because obviously I had my network. So I started talking with sellers, working with them, and really trying to still be part of the community, right? A lot of people ask me like, why don't I start another Amazon business? And the truth is, I want to do that, but I first want to wait so some ideas come to me first, because I would like to build like a real brand, and I have nowhere to rush, like maybe a year, maybe 2 years, I don't know. But for now, I still want to be part of the community. So most of my time now making the videos, educating myself, and essentially working with other sellers to show them basically what's possible.
Awesome, man. Well, look, should we, I'll let you do the honors now. You can wrap it up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Michael, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. You know, obviously me and Tom are huge fans. I think there's been a ton of value in this. Like I said, we could probably go on for another hour talking about, I don't know, everything related to what you guys did over those 4 years. But yeah, let's wrap it up there. Anybody got questions, you know, let us know in the comments below. If you've got questions for Michael, I'm sure he's open to answering it. As Tom said, go and check out his channel. What we'll also do as well is we'll drop all of your stuff in the beginning of the video, because, you know, we want everybody to see where you're putting out your content and all that type of stuff. But yeah, thanks again, Michael, for coming on. Great to chat to you. Final word, Tom?
Like and subscribe to the channel, guys. We're going to get more guests on like this. I mean, Michael's probably the highest well, 8-figure business is the highest we've had on so far, so I'm not sure how much higher we can go. But yeah, we're going to get more guests on like this. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll try and knock these out on a kind of week by week. I say week by week, probably a monthly basis. Let's be honest. But we want to make sure that they are the cream of the crop, like Michael. So we're going to dig out the best guests, and we will catch you in the next video.